What if I told you that as part of my job, I meet hundreds, thousands of women actually, and there are women with whom I've interacted who are victims of domestic violence, but they are not aware that what they are going through is indeed domestic violence. That sounds a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? That one is a victim but doesn't know that one is a victim. So I want you to hang on to that thought for now, and we'll come back to it at the end of the talk, right? In the meantime, I'll ask you a few questions. Have you heard of this term ever, man leader? Anyone who has heard of it, read of it, or come across it? I don't think so. And when I ask this question to many audiences, they say, oh, a leader is a leader, why should you specify a man? What about this term, woman leader? Then we feel the need to specify that it's a woman leader. Why should that need be felt? And this is a term which all of you have come across, read about it, you use it, you can probably name many women leaders. What about a nurse? If I ask you to picture a nurse, what pictures come to mind? When I Googled pictures of nurses for this presentation, there were about 10,000 images which were thrown up, and all of them young, pretty girls dressed up in white, green, blue. How about a teacher? Again, predominantly women's photographs. Football coach, weightlifter, head of the family, a chieftain or a chief. What are the pictures that come to mind? Strong men, muscular men, taking decisions, and powerful figures, right? Now, just hang on to these thoughts. We'll string it all together later on. What is this animal? It's a lion, come on, it's not a trick question. It is a lion, right? And what are the attributes that come to mind when you think of a lion? Strong, powerful, ferocious, regal. These are the kinds of adjectives which you use when you describe a lion. This is a lamb, obviously. And what are the attributes that come to mind when you think of a lamb? Shy, timid, cute, woolly. These are the images. What if I told you that there was a lion who thought it was a lamb? And that thereby hangs a tale. I'll tell you the story. So the story is about this little lion cub, which was abandoned by its mother. And it was staring sure death in the face until a flock of sheep happened to pass by. And this flock of sheep took pity on the young fellow, took him under their wing, and brought him up as their own. And slowly this lion grew up, eating grass, bleating the livelong day, and a year or two, it looked like a lion. Obviously, it was a lion. But it behaved like a lamb. It behaved like sheep. What the sheep did, he did. One day, another lion from an adjoining forest, perhaps, happened to chance upon this fellow, and he found it very strange that this lion is behaving in this funny way. So he walks up to the young lion, the older lion walks up to the younger lion, and these lions can speak, by the way. So this older lion asks him, so why are you behaving in this very strange way? And the younger fellow says, what strange way? I am behaving the way I am. And he's really terrified of this older, very majestic looking lion, little realizing that he himself has started resembling the older fellow. So after a lot of coaching and coaxing and cajoling, and the older lion tells him that you are a lion and you should be able to roar the way I'm roaring. And he roars, gives out this roar. And the younger lion is ready to scamper away like a little lamb, but this older lion tells him, no, you must roar the way I'm roaring. And sure enough, out comes this big roar out of the young lion after a few attempts. And it is then that he realizes that he was a lion all along, but he believed himself to be a sheep. That's where the title of my talk, You Are What You Believe You Are, right? And we'll use this story to hang this concept on, this concept which is called socialization. What is socialization? You know, you have, when children are born in families, you have pink for girls, blue for boys. You say girls can cry, boys do not cry. Girls are pretty and delicate, boys are strong and dependable, and it is these boys and girls who then grow up into young men and women. And they carry these artificial constructs with them, and they try to fit themselves into these preconceived notions of what it is to be a man or a woman. And it's not only limited till there. You have, all the time, you have cultural reinforcement of these artificial constructs. How? Through our rhymes, through our riddles, through our jokes, so-called jokes on women all the time, through our sayings. For example, you say, land belongs to the tiller, right? Not to the sower or the reaper or the transplanter. Those are all women's jobs. Tilling is this brute force employed by a man, right? Even though sowing and transplanting and reaping is a much more nuanced and technically more skilled job, I would say. But land belongs to the tiller. Then you have the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. I always say that there should be a proviso to this adage. Provided that the infant lying in that cradle is a boy who will grow up into this commander-in-chief kind of thing or fellow, right? And surprisingly, the hand that is rocking the cradle also thinks similarly. It has been through centuries. So what happens? Eventually, people stop questioning these artificial constructs. And what emerges is this, as I put it, these are concretized paradigms of perception, belief, and thought, and eventual behavior, because it is these perceptions and ideas that lead to behavior. And what emerges out of this whole ecosystem is the organism with a life of its own, which has a life of its own, called gender inequality, or repression of women's rights. I wanted to ask you that why would you consider, or why would gender equality be important to anybody? And I'll give you 4 reasons. First is that it's the moral and ethical thing to do. It's morally the right thing to do, to treat everybody with equality, dignity, respect, obviously. But the problem with moral and ethical arguments is that they appeal only to that section of people who are already morally and ethically inclined, okay? So if you are telling the morally inclined that it is the moral thing to do, it's like preaching to the choir, doesn't really wash with the rest of the people. So there is the economic argument. And there is a World Bank study which proves that more gender equal societies or more gender equal economies are likely to grow at a rate of 0.8% of GDP annually, which would translate to a 20% increase in GDP over a 15-year period. So that alone is enough. And we intuitively also feel it, that yes, the more gender-inclusive societies, the better the economy will be, right? The more labor force participation, better economies, obviously. Then there is the legal argument. It is the law of the land, right from the Constitution of India, guarantees us equality, guarantees, in fact, Article 15.3 guarantees special provisions, mandates the government to make special laws for women. So we have the dowry prohibition, the Domestic Violence Act, we have the Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplaces Act, and so many other laws. And why should we care about gender equality? Because there is a price to pay if you don't follow the law, and that there are penalties, of course. But the 4th reason, which is closest to my heart, and I could go on and on about the 4th reason, but I'll just show you a window, open a window to it, is the recognition of women's knowledge. Ever since the dawn of civilization, you've had so many thinkers, scientists, mathematicians, astronomers, all kinds of people, all predominantly men, and the knowledge which has come to us from thousands of years of civilization all belongs to men. So we have lost half of humanity's knowledge because half of the people who have ever come and gone have been women, of course, obviously. So we have lost all that knowledge. We don't know. Aryabhatta was a great mathematician, we know that. What about his sister? Maybe she was a better mathematician, but we'll never know it because her voice was never recorded, she was never given the opportunity, so we don't get to know. Maybe Charak, the great physician, learned about medicine from his mother, we'll not know. And what about Plato's aunt? Sometimes I feel we should write a book on Plato's aunt, called Plato's Aunt, and bring all these stories together so that this message of losing half of humanity's knowledge goes to people, and people sit up and take notice that it's a big loss. It's your loss and my loss. It is not the loss of those women who existed and are no more. It is the loss of all of us that we are deprived of half of humanity's knowledge. Okay. So that is the main argument that closest to my heart, why we should care about gender equality. And then you may turn around and ask me that, all these things are far removed from you. A relatively privileged audience, better access to education, good education, better access to other resources. So it doesn't really concern you, maybe. You can probably turn around and say that this is about domestic violence or rape or sexual harassment happens to somebody out there, but you're mistaken. It happens all the time and very close to us. And I'll give you an example how we don't question these paradigms by giving you an example from something with which you deal every day. You've heard of Alexa and Siri, haven't you? You have, everybody has. What do? Switch on the lights, turn off the heater, play this song. Menial jobs meant for women, and Alexa and Siri are female. You didn't question that paradigm. Now I'll take you back to those women who were undergoing violence but were not aware that it was violence, right? How you are questioning their paradigm, because they find themselves, they are a product of that paradigm. They don't question it, what we believe we are, what we are told that we are. So we have to break out of all this, and I will just end my talk by a quote from my favorite book, the Bhagavad Gita. It's the 10th chapter, 34th shloka, where Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, Mrityu sarva haraschaham, udbhavascha bhavishyatam, kirti shri vakcha narinam, smritir medha dhriti kshama. Please become a rounded individual, both masculine and feminine side, and imagine having both these sides, and imagine a world which is peopled by people like this. I think that would be the definition of heaven as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much for listening to me.